right, we're doing it. Hello, 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 and welcome to Survivor NSFW Rewind, Professor Tim Watches Borneo. Today we'll be discussing episode 10 of Survivor Borneo, Crack in the Alliance. Before I bring in my guests, as always, I want to tell you that today I am modeling a t-shirt, but for once, not one of Johnny's, right? I normally tell people to go to johnnyfairplay.com and buy a t-shirt. And with every t-shirt purchase, you do get a phone call from the great Johnny Fairplay. That's how I ended up on the podcast in Johnny's network. It's a hell of a long story. But today I'm actually not pushing one of Johnny's t-shirts because I really have to do laundry. It's 200 degrees out. So I am wearing Ethan Zahn's Survivor Old School shirt that he wore when he played Winners at War. And this shirt collects money for grassroots soccer, which is Ethan's charity that he started with the money that he won when he won Africa. And they focus on HIV prevention, but now other things in terms of sexual health, gender issues, et cetera, et cetera. So please visit Ethan Zahn, ETHANZOHN.com to show your support for Old School. Obviously, here we are very much an old school Survivor podcast, and throw some money to Ethan's cause. He's raised some ridiculous numbers of millions of dollars in the years that he has passed since he won Survivor Africa. So I am, as always, joined by my co-host, Professor Tim Wilson. Tim, what's going on in the UK? How's the haircut watch going? What's going on over there?
No better, really, from my side. I'm afraid I'm now firmly wedded to the hat because otherwise I can't see. I'm feeling like a sort of horse on a bad day.
No.
I've even got the glasses. But no. Hey, I've had in one sense, I've had an incredibly boring week and nothing's been happening, or at least if things have been happening, they've sort of passed me by. Because last Thursday, somebody suggested I should write my autobiography.
It's a good idea.
I thought, what an interesting idea. So I sat down and I'm up to 50,000 words already. And I think, I sort of toss these things off quite quickly, and it's and it's not bad, but it is. There's some quite harrowing stories popping up, and they're all very funny, but they're still a little harrowing. And I was thinking, my goodness, I went back to my old home.
Oh wow!
Which is a wonderful Victorian sort of pile, really, in the middle of the flattest part of the UK. So flat that it's a bit of land which was reclaimed from the sea in the 17th century, and it's crisscrossed by dikes and the Doug type.
I was wondering.
The sort of thing that in Holland the little boy put his finger in and stopped the water coming. Right. And saved the land. So I'm getting into such levels of innuendo I never thought was possible.
I was going to say that too. I was like, you're just digging a bigger ditch for yourself.
You can dig a hole and I will fall into it, but I'm normally the person who digs the hole in the first place, I think. Janet, I'm so impressed. We're going to get along like a house on fire.
And you've already heard her. Our guest today is Janet Carbin.
Hello, everybody. It's great
Janet,
to be here.
Yeah, so please tell us your whole story. Janet is, as I understand, a recently retired lifeguard, a grandma, and obviously a total Survivor badass. So tell us what you've been up to, Janet.
Well, actually, my speaking, Jamal and I have a speaking program, and it's mamaj.net, and we're trying to target professional businesses and kids. Of course, with the virus, we have to come up with a whole new game plan because it's an interactive type of program. But besides that, I am like, never in my life on July whatever have I been able to actually sit and do a podcast, sit on the beach. I painted my door this morning. It's like, I've never had this kind of experience. So what I do now is I get up in the morning, I do a half-hour boot camp, I bike 8 miles, I swim an ocean mile. I bike 8 miles home with my 60-pound granddaughter in the cart behind my bike, and I'm just like, okay, now what? It's like craziness.
Where are you?
In the backyard with my flint. Can I still do this? Come on, baby, let's go, let's go.
Oh, that's important, though. You're still staying prepared for the next time they call you, which is important.
I'm walking on shells with my bare feet, trying to keep my summer feet going.
But I believe all that's very important. But you may also simply be preparing for general survival. We never know how things are going to move on.
I tell you, this is really like a whole nother history book. I'm looking at these kids going, they're living history. They're going to be like 10 years from now in high school reading about their COVID kids.
We were here, exactly. The COVID generation.
Mm-hmm, really. And I think that's going to be a really crazy, I think the world is going to be forever different. Not bad, different.
Yeah. And I hope better prepared, nicer, more integrated.
I tell you, I don't know how people are going to date though. That's got to be a whole nother ball game.
Yeah.
Trying to date.
As somebody here who's single, yeah, it's a thing.
It's got to be insane trying to figure out how to do all that. It was hard before. Let's just make it harder.
What wasn't this what the what the internet was invented for?
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Instead of writing love letters to each other's and letters, you're going to be on the internet talking. Yeah.
FaceTiming or doing Zoom or live podcasts.
It's going to be Little House on the Prairie meets Star Wars.
That's actually a really good description of kind of what the last few months have been like, right? We're all kind of, or we were to a certain extent, depends on where you are and exactly where things are right now. We spoke last week, we spoke to Lisa Stanger, who's from New Zealand, and they're like, things are back to normal, right? But in most of the US and other parts of the world, this is continuing to be an issue. So yeah, we are all hunkered down at home. But yeah, Janet, can you even imagine if this had happened even, 20 years ago, before social media and before, it would be a very completely different situation.
I think the liquor stores wouldn't be able to keep stock in 20 years ago. They had a hard time now. I think that would be like, if people would be running down the streets going, I think it would be insane. I really do. It's thank God it happened at a time that we can communicate.
Right. Well, and especially I am isolating alone. Now I'm not at home all the time anymore. Things are good enough here that my doctor is, I go to a few specific things to do. But, my life is still very, very different from what it was before March.
Yeah.
But we have so much accessible entertainment, actually.
Right. That's the combination. But for me, the fact that I could talk to people and see people, at least it's not the same, obviously. But the phone versus at least seeing somebody's face, does make a huge difference. Yeah, and then just social media, having the ability to stay in touch with people. And I have friends from all over the world because I've lived overseas, et cetera. So as bad as this had been, I am the kind of person who I just keep reminding myself in all the ways in which this is not necessarily the worst thing in the world. And Tim, you're the one with the expansive view of history. Where is this phase in terms of, is this really, obviously it's a historical event, but where do you put
I'm afraid it's not new. That's the problem. It's not new at all. We've had major disease outbreaks at particular points all the way through history, and what's extraordinary is our response has been almost universally the same, which is lockdown. Whether it's a small lockdown or a bigger lockdown, but it is some form of lockdown.
But I don't think we've had such a global impact.
No.
This is global.
This has happened fast and universally, and that I think probably is a first. Yeah,
it's interesting you mentioned New Zealand. A friend of mine just went there to take her son because he starts at university, And they have such a, get picked up from the airport, you're brought to a hotel, you're quarantined in the hotel, you don't see anybody, they bring their meals to you, they test you, and that's probably why they're doing okay.
Absolutely. And you just think, what a clever country. And if we had all done the same thing instead of blithering around, we might actually be in a better position. You make the sacrifice at the right time and you have the reward. What I find so extraordinary is that Britain is in the same position geographically as New Zealand. We can just simply isolate ourselves. We have a sea around us. In America, they're in a much worse position because you have land borders. But we got it as wrong as everybody else, really.
Yeah, we did.
And I don't understand, what we were playing at. And years ago I knew Boris, so I'm a little bit ashamed of him, actually. Not as ashamed.
He's been taking this a bit more seriously since he got it, Tim, right? And he became very ill.
But by that point, it's too late. This is the point.
Of course.
It's the horse bolting from the stables. You don't close. There's no point in closing the stable door at that point. The damage is done. And it's terribly distressing. Janet, which part of the States are you from?
Well, I am currently in New Jersey.
Yay, Jersey girl here.
I grew up here and created my life here. And then for the last 3 years, I've been living in Florida. And I'm and I'm in Central East Coast Florida. I picked it because of the ocean. The ocean had to be, that was how I picked my home.
But aren't you both in Florida then?
Excuse me?
Aren't you in Florida as well, Karen?
Yeah. Oh.
No, I am in Maryland. I'm right near Washington, D.C.
Oh, my goodness. I'm so upside down.
No, I grew up in New Jersey many years ago. I've also went to school in Boston. I spent about half my adult life in Israel. But yes, I am originally a Jersey girl.
Yeah, it's a different breed, Jersey girls.
Yep. You don't mess with
No. And then, like I said, about 9 months a year, I'm in Florida.
Right. So you're back in New Jersey now?
Yes, currently I am.
Your granddaughter
with immediate access to the sea.
What?
With immediate access to the sea.
Oh, I'm not going anywhere, and that's like I said, the house I picked in Florida. It was based on what the beach was like and what the ocean was like. So, the ocean is life to me. So, yep. I was already there this morning.
Yeah. So what made you want to be a lifeguard?
Came from a whole family. My father was a lifeguard. My brother was a lifeguard. There were no female lifeguards when I lifeguarded. I was the first female in my town, and I think the third in the state, something like that.
And this is the person who sits on the big chair, or the person who goes out in space.
Yeah.
Well, would you get called?
Which one are you?
Well, I was the person. I just stepped down this year from being the chief lifeguard, which is the person that's in charge of all the lifeguards.
Yeah.
And I sat on the big chair for a lot of years. And for the last 14, 15, I've been the chief.
Oh, how wonderful. How wonderful. Well, I spent a lot of my childhood on the coast as well. So I know a few things about these, but I don't know how violent your sea is.
Very different. And the waves in New Jersey are different from the waves in Florida, the waves in Maryland. They're different in every state. And the wave in New Jersey is a really crashing wave. If you can, professional surfers will say, if you can surf Jersey, you can surf anywhere.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I grew up.
I'm so sorry.
No, I was just gonna. I also grew up, like I said, not as much as you, but it was down the Jersey Shore every summer, all of that. And then when I moved to Israel, and you realize, the ocean doesn't have to be freezing even in the summer. And with
That's true.
Not being a surfer, right? I kind of like the calmer waves.
Well, I remember the ocean when I was a child in the north of the north of Norfolk, which is on the east coast of the UK, Not only was it bitterly cold and very salty, but the colour was sort of brown. It was the colour of sort of stale sewage. And I was made to go swimming in this every morning. I hated the experience. Hated.
Well, that'll definitely make you hate swimming or the ocean or whatever if you're forced.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if somebody presents me with the idea of swimming, it is not a pleasure. I will find anything to duck out of it. In fact, in the show I did in the UK, The Circle, I had a particularly down day, and I was in fact thinking about it the other day, and I think the production thought that they would cheer me up by encouraging me to go off to the roof and sit in the hot tub. I couldn't think of a fate worse than death. And my excuse was, well, I don't have any swimming gear.
You don't need it.
I probably used the word cogs. And the next, and I can't remember whether it was the next morning or whether it was later that evening, an Edwardian swimsuit appeared on my door with straw hat, and I thought, okay, I know where this is going, and I entered into the fun.
They must really wanted you to de-stress.
Well, I did find the innuendo were flying like mad. I felt like a Bond villain.
Yeah, that costume. I know you call it a swimming costume, right? Yeah. That was amazing. So Janet, what?
It was like being in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, actually.
So Janet, I actually don't know this in terms of what's your whole Survivor origin story. I know that you were a fan. I think you applied, right? You weren't recruited. But like, when did you first start watching Survivor? What made you want to try on? Give us that story, because I don't know that story.
Well, I applied 4 times over the 20-year period. I fell in love with Survivor from the first episode. Number one, I was like, oh my, I used to like be in physical pain watching it, going, I wish I was there. And so I never thought anything like that would happen to me, that I'd get picked. So just for the hell of it, I'm basically, to be a lifeguard, firefighter, you're kind of crazy to begin with. So I was like, oh my God, I just want to live on an island. You know, that was like my dream, where some people are like, that's crazy. So over the years, made a couple of videos. The last video that they took, this was hysterical. It was a rain day on the beach. I was with my lifeguards. They're the worst days. You're sitting in a shed. It's raining. You got to sit there. It's windy and cold. And I was like, guys, let's have some fun. Let's make a video and let's submit it to Survivor. So my whole lifeguard crew, we just made this up as we went. And we're laughing and joking, belly laughing, like laughing so hard, you're like, you can't stand it. Sent it in, didn't hear anything, figured out that was the heck of it. And I finally gave up after 18, 19 years. I was like, you know what? It's just not happening. I'll accept it. Get on my computer. I'm getting ready to go to Lifeguard Nationals in August. I'll never forget it. Boom, there's an email. Hey, saw your video. Call me. Called him. I was talking to Jesse Tannenbaum, the casting director, and it was like, oh my God. Well, listen, now you're aggravating me because I've got my boat packed and I'm trying to get to Lifeguard Nationals, 3 states, so it went from there.
Now, I've heard stories like this. What was the time frame between when you sent that video in and when you got the call? Because I know it can be a long period of time.
It is. I sent the video in. I actually sent the video in, and I think they wanted me for Edge of Extinction. And I never sent the video in for the season I got picked for. They tried to get me for Edge of Extinction, but it was like too late, the timing. So I just figured it was done. Right. Got a call, and it can go from, you have to go to your finals week, the first week of October. You don't know if you're going to make it. You hopefully make it through finals week. You come home, you have no idea whether you're going to make it or not. You'll get it here and there. They'll touch base with you. And finally, in January, February, late January, early February, hey, you made it. I was like, oh my God, you're leaving March 13th. And then you got to do A, B, C, and D with your clothes and everything else. And it's a whirlwind. And March 13th, I flew out.
Wow. So really, again, like you said, it's a lot of hurry up and wait. I would not
Hurry
be
up and
very
wait.
good at that. Now, you must have known at that point, I don't even know if you knew how much in terms of what's going on with finals, but my understanding is people do get sent home during that week. If they just say, look, it's not going to work for us this time, you go home. And then there's some number of people that's, significantly more than 20, right, who were still left at that point, and then they're going to make the cast based on that number.
There are 4 finals weeks. They bring in X amount of people, between 15 and 20, 4 finals weeks, and they pick the cast from those finals weeks. Now, yes, all of a sudden, you're not allowed to talk to anybody, but all of a sudden you'd show up at breakfast or lunch and somebody's missing.
Right.
And then you make it a little bit further in the week and you're going to CBS studios and somebody's not there that you saw at breakfast or lunch. Right. And all of a sudden it goes from, 19 and then there's 13 people. But there's 3 more finals weeks.
Right. So at that
point, you don't know.
Yeah. See, I didn't know that they had multiple finals weeks, because again, this might be more of a new thing. I've heard Johnny's story from
You're not allowed to talk to anybody, Janet.
What?
You're not allowed to talk to any of the other potential contestants.
No, you can't even look at them there's people that watch you. The whole restaurant is almost booked out for Survivor. And you're sitting there by yourself eating, and you can't talk to anybody.
And what are you doing in that time?
Observing. I observed all the other people. I had nicknames for all of them. I saw Nora, and I knew Nora was a vegan just by watching her in finals week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so who else from your cast was in your finals besides Nora? Anybody else you remember?
Tommy.
Okay.
What
was your name for Tommy? Do you remember?
Oh, what did I call Tommy? I think my little redhead, because I call my husband my redheaded honey. My husband's a redhead. So I think I called Tommy my little redhead. And
he's a little redhead because he's what, 1.5 feet taller than you.
It was funny when we were competing on the family visit and we were chained together. We had to switch like 6 times because the chaining was like around my chest and it's around his waist, and we're like, okay, we're gonna run through the water in this, and I'm like, it was funny. And but Big Tom was in my finals week. I called him Jarhead. I didn't know who he was. I just knew he had a very thick neck.
And then you have a few weeks to suddenly grab everything together, and I'm sure they have a lot of input in terms of what you wear. I've heard all these stories, and it's I'm not telling secrets because obviously I know there's certain things you can't talk about. Whatever.
Yeah, but this is pretty out there. They approve all of our clothing. It's like as if you were landing on a plane on a desert island that you want to show what your vocation is. And, they don't want one person with an advantage over another. So that's why they kind of monitor who has what clothing. I'll tell you, it's a well-oiled machine.
I'm sure. But it's funny, though, when you say you don't want one person to have an advantage over others. I would think that, somebody who's a lifeguard whose clothing is probably well suited for being out there on a beach, right, I would argue is at a disadvantage from somebody who's like forced to wear a suit, right? And they do this. Right?
I would agree with you, except being out there and seeing Jason and Dan in suit jackets, it was an extra piece of clothing. So that was an advantage. Lauren and Kelly, and because they were on my tribe, I can't really think for the other tribe initially, but they were in dresses. Lauren had this sheer dress that was like pathetic.
Yeah.
So yes, you're right.
Why would she choose that?
She didn't. They chose. You're sending boxes of clothes into them, and they approve what you're going to wear.
Yes, I know that process.
Yeah, personally, I wouldn't even send in anything that wasn't going to be comfortable and durable, just perfect personally. Right, but Lauren's a nanny, right? So they wanted something that looked nanny-like. Right?
And
so it's a dress, but
Tommy sent a sweatshirt in like 5 times. Finally, they just said, we'll pick it for you. They'll get like frustrated and just say, we'll do it. And that's just it. So that's the end result.
And you just have one costume for the whole 38 days?
Yes, we didn't even get bathing suits this one. I think we were the first season that didn't get them.
No, that's been going on for a while. Apparently, Tyler
has it?
Perry. Was it Tyler Perry who told Probst?
Tyler Perry. I'm like,
Yes.
thanks, Tyler Perry. You know what the hardest thing about that is?
Yeah.
You want to try and get some of the stanky smell that you are carrying off of you. So what you do is, like, I had a bra, underwear, tank top, and a hoodie. The hoodie was like paper thin, by the way. But anyway, I would want to wash the other clothes. So here I am in Fiji heat and 110 degrees wearing a hoodie because I want those clothes to dry for at night, because God forbid you were cold at night and wet. So you had to do it when the sun was out, and so you're wearing like you're dripping wet, waiting for your stuff to dry.
Right. Right. And we have a question from the chat also, Janet. I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask. Sam is asking, do they allow brand name clothing? I'm assuming not. You can't have anything with a visible logo, right?
Absolutely not. Even when the visitor or when the loved ones come out, you can't even have a brand on your socks, on the band of your underwear, and therefore it makes it a little difficult to get clothing. Yeah. You're really looking for clothing with no brands, and it's difficult. No dry fit.
You can't take the brands off. I suppose a lot of the brands are actually permanently plastered all over the thing.
That's the point. You can't wear it.
You can't wear it. Or if they can patch it or cover it up, like they covered up the patch on my suit because I couldn't find, even though I didn't get a suit, they still covered it.
Right.
But
did you also select some sort of exit clothes as well, or not?
You're packing clothes in a suitcase for when you're off the island that you can wear home. Yeah. Because you have way ahead of time.
You have clothes for when you're a jury member as well, don't you?
You pack jury clothes, whether you're going to be on the jury or not. Jury clothes are packed.
And presumably, you also select who would come to visit you if you have a home visit.
You pick two people. You put it on a piece of paper, and you really don't know who they're going to pick.
But could they pick somebody else entirely?
They could, but they're at least giving you a chance to choose who you might like. Because you got to remember, they got to have their passport. They got to have any shots that are needed. So they have to kind of prepare for that.
Yes. Yes.
So.
I thought it was very interesting in today's episode. All that sort of production stuff where Gervais was given the opportunity to have a chat with his family, and that took place the following day. So they got the camera into the home so they could see that bit. I can see that.
I was amazed watching Borneo how much contact they had with the outside world, because we, like, from the moment we land in LA, our phones are gone, everything's gone, TV's gone. I got my phone back. We all got our phones back in the Fiji airport. I was so, like, I didn't even know how to turn it on. I was like, oh my God. It had been like 7 weeks since I was like in the world.
Yeah, there has not been a Survivor season anytime recently where there was more than one contact with family. Like in the more modern season, I'm saying like anything past the halfway point. There is exactly one time when you get to see your family. If it happens, occasionally there have been a few seasons where it's never even happened. Right. But normally there's one point, like after the merge, before the finale, at some point in there, that you're going to get to see a family member. Right? But the way that they did in Borneo, you're right, there were multiple times that you could win contact. I
was amazed at Borneo. I was amazed even, when Sean saw his father as the captain on the ship.
That didn't happen yet.
Okay. I was amazed at the amount of contact.
It's gone. I don't know.
I was amazed at the contact that people had to the outside world. I remember when we were on our family visit and everybody left, the four of us looked at each other and said, is Trump impeached? Because that was happening as we were going in, the impeachment trials. We're like, we had no idea what was going on, and we forgot to ask.
Could they tell you what's going on in the world, or they were told not to?
No, they probably could have, but we were so excited to see them. All of us, we had a list of things we were going to ask, and we all forgot. It was like you're just blinded with happiness to see somebody from home.
Yes.
I mean, we talked about Johnny Fairplay, of course, is famous for his family visits. So we talked about this a lot when he was on. Yeah.
In my case, in the circle, I had a sort of political career before I went into the show, and at the point when I was in the circle, we had huge political crisis in London at that particular point. We didn't know who the Prime Minister was going to be.
Okay.
We didn't know what was going to happen over Brexit. It was enormous, and nobody was allowed to tell me what was going on. I was so frustrated, and I remember sitting drawing caricatures of all the main political characters. One of whom I actually drew while I was sitting in the loo, which was very.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
It wasn't Mr. Trump, but it might just as well have been one of his friends. Did you know that in Yorkshire, the word Trump is simply a euphemism for flatulence?
No.
Really?
Yes, absolutely.
I love it.
To Trump is to make a little noise. Yeah, that is it. I wonder if Mr. Trump, with his Scottish background, would have known that.
Unbelievable.
It puts him in another light, doesn't it?
Yes, very much so.
I'm not even going to comment.
Yeah, it's 2:30. We got to talk about this episode, otherwise people get cranky.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Let's go back. So where we left everything out last week was, Jenna goes home, and the way that the votes, I'm just going to set it up so that you can remember what happened last week. So Jenna was voted out by 3 of the Tagi 4, right, from Rich, Rudy, and Sue. And then Sean also, due to his alphabet strategy, that was 4 votes. There were 3 votes for Rich from Pagong. It was Colleen, Jerv, and Jenna. And then Kelly basically threw her vote away for Sean. Yeah. Right. So now, back in this episode today, the first thing we hear is that Rudy tells us that the alliance target was changed at the last minute. Right. The vote was supposed to be for Jervis, and it went to Jenna at the last minute. And Rudy said it was the girl's idea. I'm just trying to unpack this because it doesn't make a tremendous amount of sense to me. Tim, did you follow this?
No, not at all. What I got was a sort of revisionist history, not by. Not by the fellow who presents the show, but by the cast members who I felt were trying to defend their decision. And the whole of that first 10 minutes was a sort of "we hate Jenna," which I thought was rather strange and surprising. I quite liked Jenna, and I was surprised by the ferocity of the things. In fact, that she's hard to live with. That we've been here for 28 days, and we have to live with her for 28 days. I just thought this was, I thought it was, I thought it was
Lord of the Flyish.
Yeah, but I was going to say, Janet, you can probably speak to this because this is the experience that Tim has not had. So Tim was, on the circle. He was on a reality show, but he was not confined with anybody else. It's him alone in an apartment, and he can only communicate with people through this app, right, called The Circle. Right. So, but you, having been on a beach with people for 30 plus days, right? I would think it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't mean anything so negative about Jenna. I would assume that everybody's going to get on your nerves after a while.
Everybody absolutely gets on your nerves after a while. And the problem is you have to figure out how you're going to have good gameplay while you're looking at this person going, oh my God, just looking at you is annoying me. And that's the challenge. And a week or a day on the island is the same amount of time as like 3 or 4 days or 5 days, because you're 24/7 with those people. So it's like, even though it's a week, it's like worth a month of being together and, all that kind of stuff. And, I think that I didn't get as annoyed with people only because I'm older and I've been there and I could just laugh now. And I'm watching a lot of the younger people get annoyed with each other where I totally would have also. And now I can sit back and get entertained by it. And that's what I think is happening. I think everything that happens on every cast of Survivor, and I'm convinced watching Borneo, it's the same kind of fights and the same kind of insecurities and the same kind of issues. And then once you take lack of food, lack of sleep away from people, it tenfolds everything.
Yeah.
And
because Tim doesn't really. Tim is often quite disturbed by what he sees as some real meanness. And you're not
I've
wrong.
been doing a lot of research recently in the last week in order to do some in order to put things into order. And yes, you have that deprivation of food, but so many other reality programs just simply throw sugar at you. Or alcohol or something, but it's actually exactly the same process, isn't it? Really?
I don't know.
It's to try and put you in stress positions.
Yes, you're right.
So
you're right.
So that chemistry between you is intensified.
Yes.
And that's really all it is. And that means, yes, the fights are stronger, but also the affection is much stronger as well.
It is. It is.
And
I just feel like, people say it's like Lord of the Flies, and it is. There's always going to be a pecking order. There's always going to be somebody that everybody's going to gang up on. And, and I feel like I was watching it happen in Borneo. Jenna was getting, that's what was happening. And it can change from moment to moment who that person is.
Absolutely. I mean, I have 2 cats, and it's a toss-up which day is the top cat. Never that clear.
But only one of them was on TV. So I mean, doesn't Bay automatically win because Bay is the celebrity? No.
No. Bay is the one who's clouted around the face, and in particular places in the house where it's quite clear this is Hannum's place or this is Bay's place, and at that particular point, that one is in charge. But it can switch. It can switch in a moment. And I think human beings under pressure will equally switch. Were you the boss, Janet?
For the most part, I was in control of the game. I tried
not trying to look like you weren't, but in fact you kind of were.
Yes, I 100% up until what I call my fall from grace. I was there. You didn't see it on TV, but a lot of what was going on was being orchestrated by myself and my alliance. And then I had my fall from grace, and then I had to decide, am I in this game or not? And had to pull myself back up, and I got back into a position again, which cost me the game.
Right. And it's another one of these trinkets where, there really was nothing she could do because another thing was put into the game to make it, quote unquote, more interesting.
Which I told Jeff, I said a nullifier with 5 people left is like a no-win situation for your top person, but that's neither here nor there. Right. It is what it is. And
so we go back to,
has Survivor ever added people to the game halfway through?
No, that is the Circle's specialty.
Okay.
I'm sure there have been some of these other dating shows. I'm not even sure.
Big Brother,
whatever, where they might bring in new people. But no, Survivor, Big Brother, the CBS reality trifecta, they don't bring people in. Your cast is your cast.
Oh, I thought people were brought into Big Brother.
Not in the US, not in the middle of
guest.
Right.
They'll bring in a guest. Yeah,
but not bringing somebody in halfway through, because that is what they do on the Circle, Janet. So people get voted out, they just bring new people in the middle of the show. Now that doesn't happen with.
I'm totally intrigued. I'm going to watch.
You really should watch.
In my case, they brought 2 people back in who had gone out. They brought them back in as a single person. It was wonderful, and they were better. Wow. They were better as a single person than they ever had been as individuals.
I'm so intrigued.
I'll
I can't wait to watch it.
This because it's a show that I absolutely.
You'll need to have a look. You'll need to have a look. But I might see if I can get dispensation from Karen to have a look at your your series.
Yes, please.
Well, we'll get to it eventually, but it's going to be a few years because we're doing one episode a week. So.
you see how controlled I am.
Tim and I are both still alive and still sentient. It's going to be.
I love it. I love it.
Right, so back to Borneo here. So at this point, we see Pagong's. Jervis is surprised that he's still there, which makes perfect sense. At this point, Jervis has finally admitted that it's an alliance. Okay, thank God. But what I call poor dumb sweet Sean, and I should just start abbreviating that to PDSS, right? And Sean, I love you. You're a wonderful Survivor character. You seem to be very funny on Twitter. But in this game 20 years ago, you might not have been the sharpest tool in the shed, just saying.
He's our Nora. He's my Nora.
Nora was the character on the show. Yeah, but at least Nora was funny and interesting. I mean, Shawnee is interesting in the sense because
Sean is interesting. Simply, you just look at him and think that because things go on around him. I think there's an art. I think there's an art in vacuity or stupidity and it's not something.
I agree with that.
It's not something one should spurn. I aspire to be slightly sort of lost. Because I think other people will try and help me.
Well, I was trying to do that on my season.
Right. You see, there you are. We knew we had a bond.
I did have a bond with a lot of people, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's what Sean is doing here right now. I think Sean is just kind of not figuring it out. But he's trying. And then we have Sue.
Why is Sean so out of it? Do you have an analysis or?
I think he's young, and I think he probably. Where is he from? Do they say? Do you know where he's from?
I should know this. I think he was living in Florida. I mean, he's originally from New York, but I seem to think that there was some connection to Florida. But again, it's been a long time. I mean, as my listeners know, I have the memory of a goldfish, and it's been a couple of months since I saw the first episode.
Way.
So I could be wrong.
The same way. I think Sean was probably a pretty sheltered kid, and just got thrown into society.
Mm-hmm.
I've only got down doctor here, so I don't know where.
He's a neurologist. I mean, that is what makes him interesting, right? Is that it's easy to say that he's not so smart, but he's not just he's a neurologist, right? We know that there are
why.
Right.
He lived an academic life. He didn't go out to the parties and do this and do that. He was like a bookworm. Now he's in with society, and here he is, Yeah,
that makes sense. And then Sue has finally admitted, this is something that I've guessed for a while, but I think she's finally saying it flat out, that she says, I'm playing the role of a dumb redneck. Mm-hmm. And she's doing it quite successfully. And by the way, this is a Survivor trope that will continue all the way to Elaine, right, who we had on the show.
Elaine is very smart.
Same thing. No, but Survivor cast this person over and over again, I think, because Sue was so successful, right? You find somebody who might not look to be, so book sport based on their profession or whatever. Yeah. And it helps if they have that, what we call that redneck accent, right? So they're from a part of the country that maybe tends to be less financially, affluent. But in the end, they're always smart, and you always have to watch out for them. And people continue to make this mistake. People made this mistake with Elaine, and I'm like, have you seen Sue? Have you seen Big Tom? Right? Have you seen any of these people? Yeah, you have to watch out.
Elaine is very smart. Very smart. By the way, I'm going to her wedding in September out in Kentucky. I can't wait. Yeah. But she is very intelligent, and she used the redneck busted can of biscuits to her advantage. She was way smart to use that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And Sue, and I'm arguing that Sue really was the original, right?
She was
Survivor redneck.
I love Sue.
So do I.
Yeah.
And I told Tim we tried to track.
I didn't pick up the accent because I'm a little bit slow on that side. But I mean,
because you're not American.
I normally would. If she was over here, I would have picked it up, but I just didn't. And so all this stuff came as a bit of a surprise to me, and I was thinking redneck. Oh, and then I thought, I understand that. I've watched programs about that, and but almost immediately after this, I think it was Sue who was doing it. was thrown into a fit of gurning. The number of faces she pulled, I don't know. She was sort of eating. She was eating Rich's squid, and there was this face pulling moment. And I thought, is that part of being a red? No, it's all.
Oh, all right.
I think that's just Sue being Sue.
That's her. Yeah,
that's
I think that's
right.
her.
Okay. I mean, you know, I think there used to be competitions for who could pull their faces. And I thought she was well on to winning that one.
No, but after talking about how smart she is, then she says that, you know, she trusts Kelly like a sister. And I'm thinking, even after this vote yesterday, because again, what do people think? I'm trying to figure out, what do people think happened last night? Because Kelly did not vote with the alliance, right? She threw her vote away. And yet Sue still trusts Kelly like a sister.
Who did Gervais vote for?
Gervais voted for Rich. Colleen, Gervais, and Jenna all voted for Rich.
And Rich knows it because he starts the program off by saying that he resents.
Well, he knows he got 3 votes.
Right. You never really know who votes for who. And that's what I think Kelly was planning on, was, you know, the ambiguity of, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do that, you know, that kind of thing. Unless you're writing on that parchment very distinctly, you don't know who votes for who.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's really difficult to work it out.
Right.
And then if Jeff doesn't read all the votes, then there's that question mark.
Which he didn't tonight.
Right. Right.
But even so, it still seems like, you know, we know with the alphabet strategy, right, that Sean is going to vote for Jenna.
But do you really think the alphabet strategy was genuine? I just don't think it was genuine.
In the beginning, I do.
I think he finally let go of it in this episode, right? We see that when we get to Tribal, we'll talk about it. But no, up until this point, I think this was his attempt. Again, he didn't want to alienate anybody. When you have even Colleen at this point saying, America's Sweetheart, saying about Sean, you know, it's time to actually wake up and play the game. It's a game. It's okay to hurt people's feelings. Vote for somebody, right? When you got Colleen telling you that, then that might be why he finally let it go. Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, I also found a bit just before we learned of Sue's stuff, the bit where Rich was doing his monologue really, and he was talking about picking people off, and this great metaphor of people are like fish. And I felt that he was convincing himself on that. I felt it was a nice image, but not entirely true. But maybe, Janet, it is. Maybe you are much more aware of what you're doing.
I think he was very aware of what he was doing. I think he is very calculated and knew exactly how he was going to portray himself and how he was going to come off to other people. He played a brilliant game. He played a game that I would never play. He played a game that I don't know that I admire, but I admire that it was a strong game for him.
What don't you admire about it?
We're not going to talk about anything beyond this episode. So tread lightly.
Oh, I see. Sorry, I'm pushing a little bit here.
I think Tim has a guess as to who might win the season, but we're not going to confirm or deny it.
I'm just going to say that Rich has a very non-interpersonal side of him that is very, like, he's a wall. He doesn't care about anybody.
Right. Right. I see him as essentially a rather sensitive soul. But there we are. I wish I'd been playing.
We'll analyze Rich more as the show goes on.
Right. Okay. Well, we've not got very much more to go as the show goes on. But one of the things I found so interesting about that little monologue was this thing that he'd been plotting against people before they even got on the island.
Yes, and that's very new school behavior. And I gotta hand it to him, because
at the beginning,
going on to Survivor, you got to play that game while you're still at home. You got to start putting your head into survivor mode. I started going places and thinking about, how people were dealing with each other and thinking strategy. I mean, I admire him for not having anybody before him to set the stage and learn from. And he did that. And that's a critical element to playing this game. Mm-hmm. It really is.
Love Rich or hate him, if he had not played the season, I feel like Survivor would just be a different game. Not that people wouldn't have figured this out eventually and all that, but the fact that he came in kind of almost from day one, not quite, but, came in with a clear idea about how this works and how you have to, make alliances and, bring in other votes. I think people would have figured that out eventually, because even Pagong starts to figure it out right about now, which is, of course, like 3 episodes too late, but at least they figured it out.
Yeah, you got to hand it to Rich. He set the stage for a lot of Survivor.
Could it have gone in a different direction? Could it have? I mean, there doesn't seem to be very much listening to each other. There just seems to be a lot of sort of strategizing and moving around each other as if people are chess pieces.
There is a lot of strategizing, but in order to strategize, you have to listen. And then when you try and strategize, what works well is half truths. Taking what some of the people have said and trying to make it work for you.
I see.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm sure that there is more. Again, we are seeing, as you know, Tim, because it's an edited TV program, right? We're seeing these little snippets, and I'm sure there were many, many more, episodes on the beach where they're just sitting around, schmoozing, and there's a lot more give and take. Now we're just trying to set up the strategic game, right? So that people can get a sense of what's happening, which is not very clear sometimes at this point in the game.
Yeah,
right.
The thing which it doesn't worry me particularly, but it saddens me, is that the really interesting sort of thing where you see into somebody's head and you see how they're listening to somebody else.
Yeah.
The edit isn't really very interested in that. The edit's interested in what they do.
We saw it in the earlier episodes, and I'll say we'll see it also in the
yes.
This time we don't see a whole lot of it.
Yeah.
So that is that's where we're set up heading into this episode, right? And then the next thing that happens is they get tree mail. And this is interesting because normally one person, maybe 2 people go to get tree mail. In this case, everybody went to get tree mail. I'm assuming production told them, hey, you all want to get this, because it's not about a challenge or whatever. It's a cigar and a parchment telling Jervis that his son Gunnar was born, I guess, the day before. Right?
Which is amazing that he even got that information, because in today's Survivor, like I did a gender reveal for my granddaughter on my show, because you have no contact. Even if you're a parent expecting a child, you go on the show and you know that you're going to miss it.
Right. So you actually got to hear the gender reveal on your younger granddaughter, right? When your husband came.
My husband wore his pink shirt. Yeah.
Right. So she knew that she was having another grandchild. And when her husband ran out in a pink shirt, she instantly knew that meant she's having another granddaughter.
Girl.
Because again, you may not get much of an opportunity to speak to him, right? Depending on how the challenge goes on.
Well, that's why we had him set it up with a shirt.
Right. So that even if you don't get to speak, you get to sit.
I could see it. Yeah. It was great seeing a redhead in a pink shirt.
You got to do what you got to do sometimes.
That's right. He wore it proudly.
Pink goes very well. Pink goes very well.
And then we have this really interesting discussion. And again, this is 20 years ago, but it is kind of interesting to me that 20 years ago, this was still considered to be, controversial, that Jervis was having children outside of wedlock.
Yes.
Oh, that went on and on, really.
Right. It went on and on. But I do also have to flag it that it's probably not a mistake. It's an accident in this case, but they focused so much on it, I would argue possibly because, again, we're talking about the old Survivor tropes in terms of Black people. They have gotten much better at this, not nearly as good as they should be, but it's better than they were in season 1. But in season 1, they were quite open about this idea that both Ramona and Jervis were, they're lazy. And with Jervis, he doesn't even really seem to have, people consider to be a real job because he's a basketball coach. I don't know. If they pay you to show up, that to me sounds like a job, but, whatever. Mm-hmm. But that was, I think you have to see this entire conversation in the context of that. right? That it's a bunch of white people basically talking about, Jervis's life and how he has lived it, and and these questions about, is it ethical, right, to have a child and not provide for it? And Kelly points out, Jervis is, so he had one relationship where 2 children were born, and at least the version of it that Kelly got was that actually in that case the children's mother decided, I don't want to marry you, this isn't going to work. So a few years later he meets somebody else, and apparently there were some issues. There was talk of marriage, but he was realizing that there were still some issues in the relationship, right? So he had 2 children with this woman. There's no evidence that I'm aware of that Jervis is not supporting all of his children, right? That he doesn't love all of his children.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
But,
no, you're 100%
But there
correct.
were a lot of assumptions. On the other hand, Rudy talks about something that was also very much part of his life when he was younger. It happens less often now. It probably still happens. That he said in his day, if a girl got pregnant, right, they would go away.
Right.
And he said they would have an abortion, or the other thing that would happen was sometimes, they would go away, they go to live with their aunt, for 6 months and place the baby for adoption.
Right.
Right. And Rudy says, I don't believe in abortion. Right. So he's not saying that was the best outcome, but he says, I also don't believe in having babies out of wedlock.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Rudy's, right, wrong, or indifferent came from the generation of a shotgun wedding. You made her pregnant, get married, regardless of the quality of life, which is where people eventually move towards. Jervis was ahead of the curve, if you think about it. Right. So
I still live in a largely in a religious community. Again, where having children out of marriage is generally not done.
Right.
It still exists. But again, that's kind of a personal choice. And that is not something that I personally subscribe to. I have friends who are become single mothers by choice.
Right.
Women are, the biological clock is ticking and they don't see somebody that they want to marry, so they have a child. And again, 10, 20 years ago, this was very controversial in my community. Now it's much less so.
So are gay relationships and gay weddings. They were taboo. Now it's like,
yeah. So the point is the world changes, but I think we do have to see this conversation about Jervis in context.
I agree.
And most people, other than Rudy, do kind of defend Jervis. And Rich, also, it's clear that Rich is not going to pile on because, again, he's not big on judging people for their life choices.
Right.
Yeah.
But the point, so Jervis will get to talk to his girlfriend. I guess they're going to do that the next day because of the time.
It was an incredibly sweet scene.
Yeah, we can take this out of context, right? So Jervis the next morning he gets to call Carmela, right, his girlfriend, when he won. Well, we're going to get there. He won the reward, but let's take this out of challenge. We'll get to the reward challenge in a minute. He gets to talk to Carmela. Yes, like I said, it's very sweet. And as you pointed out before we started, yes, of course they sent a camera crew right to her house.
Right.
So
right.
they watched both sides of the conversation.
Yeah. We started to get a relationship with Jervis, which I felt we hadn't really seen before, because the show isn't interested in that sort of interplay. Which it's Karen, what you've been saying to me all along, that Jervis is extraordinarily charming, and this is how he's winning friends, and we're not seeing it.
Right.
And if he's anything like as charming and as sweet as he was with his daughter, which I'm sure he is,
right?
He is simply bewitching. You want to put him on toast every day.
And I always found him very charming, and other people have. Tim was kind of immune to the charm, I guess, until about now. He said now that you see him with his girlfriend and his daughter, you're starting to get it a bit.
Absolutely, no question at all. But you see, I just don't think really think I get banter. I think humor is something accidental that you sort of take care of, but that sort of the sort of modern obsession with banter, most of it just goes over my head, and I'm not really quite sure what's going on.
Right, but this wasn't just banter, like you said. This is a deep relationship. We're really seeing a very private moment.
But I also think that's what he does. He just invests people. He invests time with people, and he gives people time. And I don't think that necessarily makes great TV.
Right. Well, and it goes back to this day, Janet, the whole thing about how do you show a social game on Survivor?
Right. That's what's really hard to do.
Right. Yeah. So Tommy, this person that, Janet was aligned with on her season, again, lovely guy. What is he? A fourth grade teacher?
Fourth grade teacher.
Yep. But, and everybody, and again, great social game. Everybody loved him, but we didn't see much of him because it's hard to portray that kind of a game.
Absolutely.
Because it's a very long game, right? You start chatting people up on day 1. So when you need them on day 30, you have that relationship.
Yep, that's exactly right. It's really hard. And Lauren had a social game too. So
right.
The social game is difficult to show.
Right. And I feel like with Jervis, just because they had more time, again, there were fewer trinkets, there weren't idols and idol nullifiers and all kinds of other things, sucking that time out of the episode. So
hugely different.
We got to see a lot more of Jervis.
Yes.
Yes. So taking a step back, there was the reward challenge. It was pizza and a phone call home. And this was the steady feed. It's basically just a balance challenge. If you fall off in the water, you're out. And whoever gets to the end.
That was a great game.
Oh,
that was a great game.
What I'm amazed at is Jeff is involved because he doesn't do that anymore, where he's pulling the boards out and he's like in the water.
Right.
He's much less involved now. Like he stands further
now
away.
They have people to be in the water.
Yes. So that was the first thing I said.
Yeah.
My husband said to me, "Jeff's in the water." I'm like, I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So has Jeff got rather grand?
But the thing that I have to ask you, Jenna, just before we move on, I should remember this, but I don't because goldfish brain. Did you get Survivor pizza on your season? Was there a pizza?
There was a pizza reward. However, I was not part of it. I got the fewest food rewards out of everybody.
But so what did you hear from your season, from your cast? Because I have heard that Survivor pizza is terrible.
It is terrible, but it was also wonderful from what they said. It's food. You're so hungry.
Right. But for this one, it was cute that what they did was they actually flew in the slice on the helicopter. Right. Normally now what they seem to do is, they make this pizza up, wherever it is, they do that wherever the kitchen is, right? Then they put it on a boat and they bring it to the island. Then it sits on the island, in the sun for an hour or two while they set everything up. Then they run the challenge. And so by the time you get it, yes, it's calories. People still eat it. But I've heard that it's really, really not very appetizing.
I would say it's not appetizing to the average person.
Right. Oh, no. I'm not saying I wouldn't eat it. Of course I would.
Yeah.
Right. I would eat bugs too if I got that hungry, which is why I'm not applying for Survivor, because I'm not eating bugs. But yes, again, the first Survivor pizza reward, which will come back. Okay, so then then we have another bit where we just get to see them. I guess when Jervis having the phone call, and then we are getting commentary from the rest of the cast. Yep. And Rudy says, he says, "I'll never see." I wish I could impersonate Rudy, but I can't. I'll never probably see these people again, and that's the way I want it. And it's a great line, but I'm also thinking, oh, Rudy, if you only knew.
I know
all these people. You're going to go back for All Stars. You're going to be part of the community until your Alzheimer's gets advanced enough to participate anymore. So yeah, if he thought he was just going to get home and this was all going to be over, he was.
I know. We all did. I didn't think it would carry on the way it does.
I don't think everybody expected, 51 million people to watch the finale.
Yeah.
Mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But there's also the other line there.
Yeah.
With Kelly saying that Survivor is about surviving, not on the island, but surviving yourself.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Which again is deeply, deeply poignant.
Yes, that's true.
So Janet, again, I don't know how much you've spoken about this, but I think a lot of people have had that experience on the island where you just have a lot of time to look inward. I kind of had a similar experience just with lockdown, right? That it gives you time away from your routine. To think.
I would sit every night and get by myself and look at the stars and think about my family and know that my husband and my kids were looking at those same stars and reflect on just how did I get here? What happened in my life that is making it so all these things right. Yeah. So there were all those philosophical times. I mean, I think every single survivor, Jamal said the same thing. He said, yeah, I would do the same thing. And then at night, what we'd all do, the Vokai anyway, Jack and Kelly and Jamal and myself, we'd lay on the beach at sunset every night. And we'd say, okay, we're not playing the game for the next 20 minutes. And we would just like lay there and be human beings with each other. And it was really, really reflective of where the choices that we've made in our lives and where we're at.
And I feel like those moments.
Conversations.
Yeah. No, and
what?
You'd have sort of free conversations without any impact.
No, there was camera people there, but we decided that we were going to make believe they weren't there, and just kind of be in that moment with each other under those stars, you know, listening to that ocean. And not a lot of times we didn't even talk. We just like said, let's just be here. Let's take 10 minutes and just do this.
Am I allowed to ask how many camera people were with you all the time? You had people day and night, presumably.
During the day, they worked in 4 sets of 3. And there were other people also, but they were, you know, they had certain survivors that they always, you know, covered in areas and things like that. And then at night, a night camera crew came in. They worked 12-hour shifts.
Yes.
So when you say 3 people, do you mean like a cameraman, a sound person, and a producer?
Yeah, no, the producers were in addition. Okay. It was a cameraman, a guy that held the back of his shorts because the cameraman's walking backwards through the jungle, and the sound boom guy. So they worked in those groups. And I think the guy pulling the cameraman by the back of his shorts was the most important guy, because that cameraman's walking blind backwards through the jungle.
Right. Yeah, you never think about that, right? That they're doing everything. Like what did Ginger Rogers said? I did everything that Fred said, except backwards and in heels.
Yeah.
Exactly. How did we all get to that point at the same point? God,
we're all in tune.
And I would have said it. 30 or so has no idea what we're talking about, but that's all right. So again, so now we have more intrigue before they get to the immunity challenge. And, you know, Rich and Sue on the one hand are discussing about how much they are glad that they weren't on Pagong, right? And then we got cut to a shot with Kelly where Kelly talking about the alliance is dirty and conniving, and, you know, making a deal with Rich is like making a deal with the devil. And of course, it seems to me that, you know, Kelly, you know, probably thinks that she would have been better off on Pagong. Because again, we have to remember, it's so easy to forget. Kelly is 22 years old. Yeah. Kelly is a baby, right? Yeah. I mean, he seems across as so mature and so level-headed on the show. You know, I just kind of assume that she's, I don't know, 30-ish, but she isn't. She's 22 years old, right? Yeah. So we see that, you know, so we see that Rich and Sue are solid, and Kelly, once again, they've been teasing this for now 2 episodes. You know, how is Kelly going to vote? You know, is she going to leave the alliance? And the reason, again, that they keep teasing this is because right now it looks like Pagong's going to get Pagonged, right? We talked this word last week, right? That being Pagonged is just getting voted off one after the right? So that they're kind of
they're still using that. That's still being used today. It's just going to be a Pagong, you know, survivor.
Right. So it really was very, very important.
But how do you stop, Janet? How do you stop that thing where you're just knocking one person off after the other as you get to this stage in the game?
Well, the swap happens at some point.
Yeah, let me explain. And this is something we've done to try to make this slightly less of a problem. Is that I think starting in the 3rd season of Survivor, rather than just having two tribes that go to the merge, you know, they have what they call a swap. So again, so before the merge, you still have 2 tribes, or sometimes you even have 3, but the groups get mixed up. So the idea is that by the time you get to the merge, you have multiple alliances, hopefully, with different people, right? So this is not just this, you know, numbers game. Yeah. Otherwise, if you go in, you know, 7-5 or 8-4 or whatever, you know, Obviously, it doesn't always happen, but there's a high probability that that's what's going to happen. So the more that they mix up the cast before the merge, they feel like
swap for a few days or something.
Yeah, I'm saying they
swap,
and then they don't go back to their original tribes. They swap, and then they may go to the merge, or even a few times they've done multiple swaps. Which at which point I don't know who anybody is.
Swap screws everything up.
There's a term
were you swapped, Janet?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
We
Now everybody is. I mean, since Heroes versus Villains, I think there's always been a swap, and there is a term in Survivor, Tim, for this. It's called being swap screwed. And what that means is that you were good with your original alliance, right? If there hadn't been a swap, you'd be good for the merge. But you then get swapped into a group where the other group is the majority. Because let's say you've got Tagi and Pagong, and you do a swap, and you end up with two swap tribes, one that is majority Tagi and one that is a majority Pagong. So if you are a Tagi person who ends up in a majority Pagong swap tribe, right?
You're screwed.
Again, should they do it for smart, Tim? They should vote out the Tagi, right? If you look around and you say, there's 3 of us, there's 2 of you, right? So we're just going to get rid of the Tagi while we can, because when we get back to the merge, right, the fewer Tagis there are, the better off we are going to be. So again, this is going to come up in a couple of seasons, but they have tried very much again to deal with this because they understand that Pagongings don't make good TV. They're very aware of that issue.
Yep.
Well, I must say, last week and this week's episode were much more exciting than the sort of 2 or 3 weeks before that, which were a bit dull. So I must say, I'm quite enjoying the Pagonging.
Right.
No. Have fun.
Isn't there a point sort of in a horror film where the people are going to get knocked off one after the other, and that's rather what it's like. It's just finding the drama in that process. You know what's going to happen in the end. That's the same with all Greek theatre. You know what's going to happen.
Well, that's why they threw in all these curveballs, like swap, like immunity idols, like nullifiers, like advantages, extra votes, block a vote.
Yeah, you have no idea
all
how
these
much
things came in.
Stuff there is in this game now, Tim.
Yeah,
right.
It's a lot. And I'm not against, advantages in general. I just think there are way too many of them. And that's why we don't get these moments, like you said, of you and people on the beach, right, watching the sunset. We get those moments in Borneo and in the early seasons because they have the time to let it breathe.
We thought on our season that they were going to go back to old school Survivor. And we thought maybe Island of the Idols, all the idols are there. Maybe there are no, we were really thinking it was going old school.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. I mean, and there's been a lot of discussion over the years about whether they should do a real, true old school season. And even like when they did, the last season. So Janet, again, with Elaine was on the last, season with new players that they played. This aired last fall. Right. And then they played all the winners. So when it was all winners, again, there was a push like, why don't we just do it old school? Right? Just get rid of the advantages, just make these people play. And rather than that, it was the opposite. There was more stuff than ever. And it was still fun because it was such a great cast, but
Right.
All right. So now we get anything else we want to flag before we get to the immunity checks?
No, just the image of the chess game. Chess game. That in a way that's overplayed, but it's
right.
I think it's quite interesting. I love the bit in I don't know in Alice in Wonderland where the Red Queen grabs Alice and says you've got to keep running in order to stay still, and if you want to go anywhere you've got to run twice as hard. That seems something that you have to do. You know about this, Janet?
Yeah. Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
That's actually a really good description of what it must be like.
Yeah,
it kind of feels that way.
Yeah, and even when you're doing
that's also. The Red Queen is describing that process as being in a chess game.
Yeah.
If you want to go to the next square, you've got to run twice as hard.
And figure. Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So we get to the immunity challenge, and all we get from that is it's something clearly with lights and night on the beach. right? And then we get these great shots of, they're coming into the challenge. We get lots of shots of people being very pensive and serious, right, as they get on the beach, right, to see what this challenge is going to be. And what it is, it's a fire making challenge. And fire making challenges are still a big part of Survivor. They're used sometimes to break ties. They've also they've inserted them into the final four. The whole mechanism has been changed, so we won't approach that right now. But what's interesting with Borneo is just how much, obviously there are differences, but I was struck by just how many similarities there are between the fire making challenge in this very first season and how they deal with fire making challenges all the way through. Right.
I actually agree with you on that. And I thought it was very interesting. And I hadn't thought about it until I was watching it. I'm like, wow, this is really so prevalent to today's Survivor.
Right.
So yeah, I do agree with you.
Lots and lots of things have changed, but it's just so cool when you look back and you say, yeah, this is where it all started. So just so you know, Tim, when they do a fire making challenge now on Survivor, you don't have to collect the driftwood. They give you a supply of wood and I guess, and what do they give you, like shavings or
shavings, kindling, flint,
right.
you know.
Yeah, you know this, Jen. So lay it out. So you get that, and you don't have to go get the flame, right? You just have to make a flame. So that's like they didn't have to make flame with flint. Like that's what I thought was going to happen, but that's not really what this was, right? They had to go get the fire and bring
out in the ocean or whatever, the water. Right. And bring it back and light their fire to get a fire big enough to burn the string. Right. But if you were running out to get the fire and your torch got wet, you were screwed.
Right. So what happens now, Tim, is you get set up with a whole little fire making setup. You have a little table that's identical, and you have an identical amount of kindling and all these things, and you get a flint, and you have to actually strike the flint, make the fire, and the fire has to burn through. It has to burn through that twine or string, and then that. And
today that's it.
That's it.
And then the flag comes up. Yeah.
Right. So again, differences, but it's surprising how similar it is in certain ways.
It really is.
I much prefer the fire in the water.
They had it on poles, and you had to run out there, and get the fire on your torch from the pole and carry it in
without having it go out.
Yeah.
And again, it was kind of hard to see. Even just between season 1 and season 2, they're going to get a lot better at filming these challenges in such a way that you can actually see what's going on. So again, we don't really get to follow it, moment by moment, the way we will again with a modern fire challenge with this tight shot on the winner, right? But Rich wins. And so again, whatever chance this was that, Kelly might turn on Rich or whatever, guess what? It's not going to happen either. Right? They teased it with us last week. It didn't happen. He got a lot closer last week, I think. This week, before Tribal, Rich is out of the picture. He can't win. Okay? So now they are preparing, right, after the immunity challenge, right before they go to Tribal. And so Jerv and Colleen are making costumes, right? They say we can't really see what it is yet. But Jervis says he's Bullseye, and Colleen is Sitting Duck, right? And those are the characters that they are going to play at Tribal. We get to see it. And then Sean shows up, and Sean suddenly wants to make an alliance with Jervis and Colleen. Right. They realize that they need Kelly. And then Kelly is teasing maybe something that nobody expects is going to happen. Right. And then Rich teases, there might be consequences for Kelly. Right. Rich said something in that made us think that maybe it's going to be Kelly this time. Right. Because she's possibly betraying the alliance.
Right.
And then they put the big storm starts, and they put on their raincoats, which again, granted, I have a feeling. What is this with the yellow rain slickers?
Oh my gosh, I was like, and I can't believe they didn't build a better shelter. They just used that, propped it up, and just left it. They should have raincoats. I would have been like, raincoats would have been blocking the sides. I would have something built all the way around.
Yeah, but the point is, you don't get raincoats these days. You just show up at Tribal with your underwear or whatever, and you get wet.
Yep. We actually went twice in our underwear and tried to keep our clothes dry because you didn't care if you were going on national TV in your underwear. You wanted to be dry at night.
Right. And if people see me in my underwear, who cares?
Oh, well.
Priorities. No, I totally get it. But anyway, they all put on their matching yellow rain slickers and they go off to tribal. And then Sean gives up his alphabet strategy, right? Finally. And I guess probably it's because he saw Jenna being voted off, and he realized finally people have been telling him, and we've been telling him for weeks, that when you broadcast who you're going to vote for, right, that gives other people information, right? In this entire game, information is currency, right? And so when you just tell people, hey, 3 weeks out, this is who I'm going to be voting for, right? First I'm going to vote for Jervis, and then I'm going to vote for Greg, and then I'm going to vote for Jenna. So just knock yourselves out. This is what I'm doing.
Information is key.
Yeah, he finally realized that this was dumb. Right? Because, and he says, I'm going to give it up. I'm finally going to just
play the game.
Yes. Episode 10, he's finally playing the game.
Yeah.
And then they ask Kelly, how are you going to vote? Right. And she, of course, doesn't say anything about alliances, lack of. She says, I'm going to vote for based on who's competition and who's pissing me off.
Right.
Which, other than alliances, those are two pretty good reasons to vote people out.
But she shouldn't have said that. That I think was not a good thing to say. She should have been a little craftier.
Yeah. But I assume that it's crafty. I assume that that statement itself tells you nothing about who's she going to vote for.
That's
it could be
true.
Anybody who's competition or anybody who's voting her off or pissing her off.
The whole episode began with her. So talking about this sort of void, talking about this sort of hole which she which she's in. So it's sort of topped and tailed, and she's not in a good place in this episode, I'm afraid. She's depressed.
I think she knows she's heading down, and I don't want to give anything away. You know, she definitely is sensing a problem. Yeah. Sorry, the phone's ringing. It'll go off in a minute.
Yeah. No, but I would say that, she has two options, right? One is to stay in the Tagi alliance, right? Which it does seem, if they stick together, should get them to Final Four, right? But she's no longer comfortable with that, right? And she has to be able to look herself in the eye, right? So I get that. But she's still she doesn't want to broadcast any of that, obviously, before the vote, because she does have to know that, look, I feel like if Rich knew really what was going on, he would target Kelly. Right, so she's done a pretty good job, I would say, of hiding.
How much do you feel that she's being wound up by production?
I don't. I think she's pretty intuitive. I know production had nothing to do with us. They didn't talk. They didn't look at us. And I can't imagine it was that much different even at that time.
Tim, so we've talked about, there have been clear situations of production manipulation even in Borneo. We've talked about those. But I think Tim, because he's, having seen from the inside, not really knowing going in the extent to which production can put a finger on the scale. Right. And so now I feel like every time he sees anything on a show, it's great. He's like, Sometimes
you see, I just felt, I didn't see people. We didn't have camera people in the apartment, but I knew who was which different person was controlling the cameras because they moved in different ways.
Oh.
And I would ask them,
it's kind of like Big Brother, that there are cameras on the walls.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see what they're.
Yeah.
And so they had a personality, and that influenced me. It very much influenced me because I felt secure or I felt anxious because I was with a new camera person.
Oh yes. Yeah. We got a new guy came one day, and it was like, whoa, who are you? Yeah.
Absolutely. And you just feel you've invaded my little spot.
Yeah. That's very true.
Right.
And and you feel quite possessive of this.
Yes.
Of this don't you?
Yeah. Yes. So, and even though you're not talking to them, if they change, it's like, what?
I also interested with Tim.
I had this fantasy that that really I was a sort of I was a chess piece. I was literally a chess piece, but I wasn't playing the game of chess. I was being played. And I do you remember that wonderful late 1960s film of Jason and the Argonauts?
I don't remember. I remember it, but I don't remember it.
I don't remember.
You had Zeus and the gods placing people on a sort of board and moving them around. And you could say, oh, we're going to put this god in your way or this monster in your way, and you suddenly saw, we are as whatever it is to the gods. They kill us for their sport. That's what King Lear says, I think. But I felt, if the gods were nice to me, I was going to get on well, and as long as I kept the gods happy, I was fine. And if the gods wanted to destroy me, they could do it like that. And they do it through their machinery.
Yeah, so I just want to tell you, Tim, so this is the thing. There is something going on behind the scenes, but it's not what you think. All right, I really do think in this case, this is a real conflict that the Kelly has been happening. What was going on, and this, of course, is rumor and innuendo. I don't have any proof for this, but it is a very, very commonly told story of the earlier days of Survivor. Okay, allegedly, I wasn't there. What was going on with Kelly was that not anything with her votes, right? Her votes were not being influenced. But, people get really hungry on the island. And I think they've gotten better about this. But cameramen and other members of the crew can have food.
And they were feeding her.
Again, rumor and innuendo says that in exchange for certain sexual favors, Kelly was being fed by not by production as production, right? But a particular person in production.
Right.
Oh, I'm sure there was a lot of production.
Well, there's no food or anything allowed on the island by the camera crew anymore.
Right. So the camera crew have to starve as well.
Well, they're there, right? They have their 12-hour shift, and then they go, and then they get to eat.
Right.
So back to what's going on at Tribal. Let's just wrap this up.
An entirely new image to the boom microphone.
Yes. So that's what really was going on. But I really do feel like this conflict is not being set up by production.
Well, she was being abused.
In what way?
Well, this is you've got somebody in a position of power who is teasing somebody who's in a game with food for favors. This is deep abuse. This is practically I've just been punctured by my cat. That's text.
You're not paying attention to that.
My finger. And you don't know I'm a hemophiliac, you poor thing.
Well,
ow!
I don't know that Kelly was being abused per se.
Yeah.
I think that she knew what was going on.
Yeah, I see these two adults.
People have known what was going on, but this is
partnership.
Yeah, I get your point. The
point is, this is, you're already in a position where being on camera and being in this stress situation, you're already in a position where you can be manipulated. To then add somebody who is saying, well, I can give you a few brownies if you deal with my lollipop, or whatever.
I think
so much.
I again think Survivor, as my season played out, very much is a reflection of society, and I believe that people act within it very much like society, and you're going to get every aspect of it. Just like the Kelly and Dan aspect on my season. And I will say this here and now, Dan is a friend of mine. I respect with Kelly's opinion, and that's why I stood up for her, because it was valid for her. But what's true for one person as being over the line may not be for another person, and we cannot determine that for other people. We need to respect people for where that line is, but we also need to understand people's intent.
I agree entirely with you, but that's for the people who are playing the game. I think it's where you have people from outside, people from production, moving in. They are taking advantage. It's a position in statu. It's a sort of parental position. It's a guardian position.
Yeah.
I
can see that.
You don't abuse the zoo animals, and that's really what we are.
Right.
Although, but again, in Janet's situation, though, there was kind of, again, we're not going to get, Tim hasn't seen the season. But let's say, what if one of the zoo animals is kind of actually pulling the strings, perhaps, and keeping production on its toes? It's not necessarily.
Well, I trust they are, but production needs to have super rules because they're doing something so unusual, and it is. This is not a natural way of living. I know production goes from one season to another, and it seems like ordinary life to them, but they're doing something unusual. They're doing something very bizarre.
Right.
When it's at its best, it produces amazing results. But I think it's very easy just simply to push it into a position where it's very dodgy morally.
Right. Yeah. And that's something that Janet, I think, has definitely seen, not for herself personally, but in her season. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, about which neither of us can really comment, I'm sure. But,
well, Janet can share whatever she wants to share. And Tim, you're not going to watch this episode this season for about 4 years. So just, put your hands over your ears for 30 seconds.
You're going to have to watch. You're going to have to skip up to my season.
Oh, no. I will get in my little TARDIS and come and see you. Right.
Yeah. So again, just
back to Borneo.
Yeah, no, but Tim's point, but it's interesting because Sue now says something that I think is very similar to what you were saying, Tim. You said, Sue says this is a game, but it's also like a lot like life with alliances. She says if a lobbyist gives money to an elected official, right, or people join a church, not because they're religious, but because they want to make connections, that's just like an alliance.
Absolutely.
Right. I agree.
Right. And then Rich does the absolute opposite.
The alliances, Karen, are within the little community. When they move outside that community, and the gods are the gods showing their hand. That's the point. Well, not necessarily a hand. Yes. Let's get the hands out of the way. But when the gods move in, I think that's the point. That's the point at which the moral compass goes wild.
Yeah, it's always about exactly where that point is and when they should interfere. Again, this was a big issue in Janet's season about at what point do they move in, and if they move in, what do they do, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to see this even right? But we don't have to wait to 39, right? There are going to be situations like this that are going to come much, much sooner.
Yeah.
Right.
When the gods move in, they have the opportunity to change the series to create very dynamic television at that point. It's like introducing an earthquake into into the environment. You're suddenly introducing a new stress point. And it's going to have a knock-on effect throughout the season. So I would have thought the problem that we began talking about this is with Kelly,
right?
That would have a knock-on effect across the whole cast.
Karen, isn't it interesting? It's both these issues. The name is Kelly.
There was also a Kelly in Janet's season.
Yes.
No. What I would like to know is what was the name of the cameraman?
Even if I knew that, I wouldn't share it. And really, I have to say, I don't know. The only reason I have any reason to think that this is through is just, it's one of those stories that just refuses to die. I'm not saying it's true, but I just had to bring it up. Because it is true that, these people are having interactions with the contestants that are not necessarily being captured, and things are going on that people are not aware of, right? That do very much, again, just being fed. And we've talked about this in other episodes, right? If you win a food reward, right, it makes a huge difference on your performance in the game. Because if you win a food reward, then you might win
calories.
It's right. So it's not just poor thing. She's hungry, and it's that it really will. If this happened, it really could have given her, a little bit of
extra calories.
Right. And then with Rich, so this is another thing I wanted to ask you about Janet. So Sue makes this very, I feel like, honest and, convincing argument that alliances are kind of just like life. And then what happens next? Rich just keeps being cute. He says anything could happen. It's a game. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know, Janet, in your season, again, Probst was not quite as forceful in his earlier seasons, right? But I mean, in your season, and based on stories I've heard from other people, if you tried to give Probst this kind of, namby-pamby non-answer, my understanding is he would just like shut the cameras down and say, try again, right? I want you to answer.
He would get very, he would call you out on it, and not so nicely.
In front of the others.
Yes.
So the whole thing is revealed because he knows more than anyone else, and everybody knows that. Right.
And Rich is being a very good player in the sense that not wanting to give again because information is currency in this.
It is.
Oh, he has an impeccable poker face.
Right.
He does.
Right. So when you're playing, you're not only playing against your cast members, you're also kind of playing against Probst, right? Because he wants to make good TV, right? He wants to get everything out there.
Yeah.
But then you have smart players who don't necessarily want to give him the information. And so if you do it well, it's more of a dance and it's not quite so obvious. If it's this obvious, Probst would just cut it down.
Oh, he would cut you right down. He's good at it.
But by this point in the game, there isn't a single player who doesn't think there is an alliance going on.
Oh, everybody knows there's an alliance somewhere. You figure everybody's in an alliance, with somebody.
Right.
Yeah,
and those alliances now even often are formed on day one. So there's
they ebb and flow.
About is there alliance? The questions are what are the alliances, and do I know all of them? And this person is in alliance with me, but you have to assume again they're probably also in other alliances.
Right, you do. You absolutely do. There's no more old school where you're in alliance with one person. No, at one point I had an alliance with like 7 different people.
Yeah.
Did they all know?
It was crazy. I was like, you want to be in my alliance? Sure. I started trying to remember who I was with.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think, a clever game, these alliances wouldn't even need to be spoken. They would be almost unspoken. If you weren't allowed to say about the alliances, you would still have them. This is the point.
That is true.
But the question now is not, are there alliances? Of course there are alliances. Now it would just be kind of, and he's not going to ask you flat out who's aligned with who.
Right.
But he will try to ask these leading questions, right? And then you, as a player, have to kind of figure out, like, okay, what is he trying to get? How much can I give him that's not going to give away my game?
Absolutely.
Right? And you're doing this again, and this is 30 days in, and you're starving and not sleeping.
And that's what you don't realize. Your emotions are on your fingertips, and it's like, what is he looking for? Stop.
Right. What can I say to make him go away and focus on somebody else before I say something that I'm going to regret?
I used to try and not look at him. And hopefully he wouldn't notice. I was like, maybe he won't notice I'm sitting here.
I assume that doesn't.
The tribal council is quite intense, isn't it?
They last anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. And they are.
And how many camera people are in that? Because that itself is quite an intense experience.
You're not seeing a tribal council because it's dark and they have a set. There's hundreds of cameras all around, but you don't see them, and they're on booms and moving because that's more of a set, so they can do that.
And I have a feeling that it was much more visible.
They're all on the inside. They're all undercover.
Yeah, they're all undercover, yes.
Whereas I'm assuming in Borneo that they were the cameras were out in the open. Again, I don't know, but my guess.
At one point, you'll catch a cameraman on scene if you look hard enough. Yeah.
Right, but they're actually quite good at hiding. They really are.
They are.
They really are. All right, so then we get.
I love the scenes where they're following Rich doing his fishing. Brilliant in the work.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the cinematography and the extent to which they already had that in season 1. They get these amazing nature shots, and that does not change.
Yeah.
They have less time for it.
The whole production. I know I keep coming back to production, and sometimes with a sort of wagging finger, but I think the whole production of the show is superlative. It's just having been in having been in a show, I can see the hands, or obviously not all the hands of production very clearly.
They're amazing. They really are amazing. Yeah.
So now let's look at the votes, because we were just thinking, oh, this is so lovely. Everybody now understands that they're alliances, right? They're going to play, in a way that makes sense. So we see the votes. So Jervis, what does he do? They finally realize there is an alliance and they need to vote together. And Jervis votes for Sean. And he says, I'm going to vote for Sean because he's not that smart. And I'm thinking, really, Jervis? Right? Pagong is going to Pagong again, right? If you're finally saying, I'm waking up, I need to stop this. How about you vote for somebody who is in the other alliance?
Yes.
Right? Why don't you vote for one of the Tagi Four? Nobody votes for a member of the Tagi Four. Now, and Jervis, after he, has the voting confessional, he turns around and you see this kind of target on his back. They were playing with something. It looks like maybe masking tape or something, right? And they were sticking. And also, Colleen said something about being sitting duck. We didn't get to see that one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Sue votes Jervis out because he's good in competitions. That's true. Right. But what she doesn't say, or maybe she says and it doesn't make the edit, is that also because Sue has said that Jervis is lazy. Right. She's called him out for saying that women are like cows. Right. Yeah. But we don't see that. What she says is, he's good at competitions, which he is.
Right.
So we see the votes. Jervis and Colleen vote for Sean. Right, because they woke up and realized the danger of the Tagi Four. So what do? They vote for somebody who's not in the Tagi Four.
I know. And he's not one of the stronger players. You want to go for the stronger players.
No, I mean, I feel like they should be going for Rich, but pick any of
that's what I'm saying.
Four.
Yeah, I know.
He's got immunity today.
Yeah, but I would have gone for any of them. Yeah.
Who would you have gone for?
I probably would. Well, if I couldn't go for Rich, which would be my main target,
Rich is off the table.
I probably would have gone for Susan.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody would expect it.
So I didn't get that. You froze for me at that point.
I would have gone for Sue.
Yes, that's who I would have gone for as well. And who would you have persuaded to vote Sue? Who would you have persuaded among the others to vote with you?
Colleen and Sean.
Really, you get Colleen, Sean, and Jervis. That's 4. So we just let up. We are at 7 right now. Right?
Yes, Jonathan's right. He wouldn't have got time with Jervis because he was so busy doing all his family things. I just don't think he would have got time.
Right.
I would have just told him. Since you didn't have time, listen, this is what's going on. I would have presented it that way.
Yeah.
Right.
And say, this is what we're all doing, whether we were all doing it or not. That's what I would have said to him. I would have said, we're all doing, boom, 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 boom. We're all doing this.
How would you be sure? How would you be sure they wouldn't all then vote against you?
Cross my fingers. Gotta play the game. Gotta play the game.
But you would have set up a relationship with Jervis well in advance, wouldn't you?
Yes, I would have.
And we saw that even in season 40, right, where and somebody did this very deliberately, right? Tony did this, Janet, right, where you kind of go in, you wait 10 minutes until you have to go to tribal, and then you run up to somebody again, with whom you have a previous relationship, and say, you got to vote for this guy. I can't explain it. There's no time. You just got to trust me, right? That move has been done and done successfully, but that only works. You have to have pre-existing trust, right?
You do. And so at some point you just got to take that leap and step out of your comfort zone and say, target the big. Like my target was Missy and Aaron when they both got voted out. Elaine and I actually set that up before we even went to the challenge. Mm-hmm. You gotta think 2 steps down the line.
Right. Yeah. And you can talk about, okay, we want to vote this person off, but if they do get immunity or whatever, then you have to have this. You have to have a second plan and a third plan and a fourth plan.
And do you think Richard's thing about catching fish is enough to keep him going?
Not in today's Survivor, because I caught fish. And that was great, but then you have to figure out the time you're out fishing, how much plotting's going on that you're not involved in, and then
into the jungle. It's a foolish move.
And then how many calories are you burning if you don't catch fish, and or the fish you're catching going to replenish the calories you spent while you're out there?
Yeah.
I stopped fishing after a while.
Yeah, I mean, and Rich was actually successful because he is a very experienced spear fisherman before he went out. If you haven't done that before, then again, the chances that you're going to get anything are going to be relatively slim.
Well, I caught fish.
You did?
I was one of the first women to spearfish.
You did? We didn't see that, did we?
I know. It was on an extra scene.
Oh,
One of the extra scenes. And it was one of my proudest moments because that was one of my goals. But, you know, you have to figure out, is it worth it? You know, for all those other reasons.
Right.
So.
And then we finally get to say goodbye to Jervis. And I just have to flag this statement by Probst. I put it in, you know, when I was posting the episode. Probst says to Jervis, "Bring me your staff."
Yeah.
Right? Torch. He says, "Bring me your staff." And I'm like, some weird biblical cosplay. Why is this suddenly a staff? It's a torch. Bring me your torch.
Interesting point. Interesting point. I don't know what to make of it.
Does he use it thereafter or not? Or
no, I don't think so. It's always been a torch. And we saw this even from the first episode, right? Fire represents your life. When your fire is your torch is snuffed out, when your fire is gone, so are you. Right. That has not changed. That statement, that setup has not changed a bit in 40 seasons, which is why I'm so weird. And it's not the first episode, it's the 10th episode. Why is he calling it a staff?
I don't know. It was really weird.
It's just weird, you know, not a big deal. But
he takes himself very, very seriously. So it's not that surprising.
Right. Well, we talked about that I didn't really realize just how much Survivor takes itself seriously until I started watching Big Brother. Right.
Yep.
Big Brother does not take itself seriously at all.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Oh my gosh, you know, they're putting them in silly costumes. And
Yeah.
And then you go back to Survivor and you realize, wow, you know, I mean, there are $1 million at stake, but it's a game, and he doesn't portray this as a game, right? This is life and death.
This is life.
On Survivor.
Yep.
And maybe we should
Absolutely.
Would you be on any other reality TV shows?
Have I now? I would love to do. Would you? I would love to do The Amazing Race.
Cool.
And yeah, I would go on other TV shows.
I want to see you and Elaine on The Amazing Race.
We said that. Elaine and I said that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be so cool.
Yeah, well, reach out to casting. Of course, now when you play The Amazing Race, it can take them 2 years to actually put your season on the schedule.
Well, that's it. Yeah, no, it's already been proposed to casting, but Amazing Race, I think, is so far behind. I don't know.
Right.
With production.
Right. Yeah, they're about to put a season, you know, only because of the pandemic. We are going to see the season that they taped in late 2018.
I know.
Not just, besides the fact you have to stay quiet for almost 2 years.
Oh, that would be brutal.
Money until your show airs. So whoever won the season of The Amazing Race, which we're about to see in September,
has had to wait a very long time.
2 years.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, I think you should absolutely go on The Amazing Race. You know, Amazing Race was actually my first CBS reality show before I watched Survivor or Big Brother.
Well,
so, yeah.
They just have to call.
Yeah. Okay, so then we talk about next week. What happens next week? Somebody gets to spend the night on a yacht. And they keep telling us the alliance continues to unravel. But I'm just looking and going, right, they want us to think the alliance is unraveling, right, because otherwise there's no suspense. But have you noticed that, yes, on the one hand, the alliance is unraveling. On the other hand, they keep getting their targets out?
Absolutely. And the only thing that's unraveling about the alliance is Kelly.
Right. At least at this point.
Which Rob makes me think that all the attention she's getting from her cameraman is probably intentional. It's knocking her gameplay out of her.
Yeah, and I feel like I said, a well-placed sandwich can actually really help your gameplay.
Well, I think that's what she's getting.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So, what else? Anything else, Janet? Anything else you wanted to share about your season or this episode, or?
I just, it was really interesting watching the similarities and the differences between the first season and my season, which was second to the end. You know, how many things are still so similar, and yet, oh my God, they had so much stuff and contact with the outside world, I was going, whoa!
Right.
But
I could have talked to my husband 5 times. What's up with this? Yeah.
I know. I was like, whoa.
Janet, are you still a fan?
Very much so, yeah.
That's so refreshing.
Yeah, and what tends to happen, there are exceptions, but most people come off the show and they do have their complaints, right, and feel things that, but they still tend to be fans. They want to come back, right, which again makes me feel that people have not been so badly abused, because if they were really that badly abused, they would never get anybody back.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll see what the future brings. That's all I have to say for all of us.
Yeah, and we don't even know when there's going to be season 41, right? They have finally admitted it and announced that there is not going to be a Survivor season on in the fall.
First time ever.
Right.
Oh, really?
Crazy.
I mean, back in May when they had the finale for 40, that they said they're going to be back in September, and they wanted 16-year-olds to apply.
Yeah.
Did you think that was as bad an idea? Because I thought it was kind of beyond ridiculous.
Horrible, because Jack was 23. He was the youngest on my season. Mm-hmm. We all talked about it. The PTSD is real. The psychological trauma that is with us still today, and I talked to a lot of the other survivors. There's so many things that trigger us that they feel and we feel, and different things. I would hate to put an 18-year-old in that situation.
Or a 16-year-old.
Or that's unfathomable. Yeah.
But didn't even occur to me that they were going to try to make a season this summer. Although people have been talking about, Survivor Wild West. I do kind of like the idea. What do you think about the idea of getting out of Fiji? I understand why they're doing it in Fiji. They keep, for the last 5 years, it saves them a tremendous amount of money. It makes lots of things much easier when they just keep going back to the same place. But it's getting a little bit boring for the super fans. So, what do you think? Do you think it's time for them to move on from Fiji, Janet?
Well, I know the popular consensus is to move on from Fiji, but I don't know how much different another island somewhere is going to be.
Yeah, you have to have You have to have something like China or Gabon or Africa, where I agree with you. If it's just a tropical island, then it kind of doesn't matter which tropical island.
Exactly. And if that's the case, I get the logistics are easier in Fiji. I don't have this big opposition to Fiji, but that's because I'm a player, not a watcher, so that might be make it a little different, as a player. And if I had to play again, I'd rather play in Fiji because I know the food that I could find.
And you don't have, I'm sure there were things that were uncomfortable. But you didn't have horrible problems like with the sand fleas. I'm just thinking about the things that happened on other seasons, right?
We did. We did. We had ants all over us.
Right.
Yeah. And they were biting ants. And then the birds that came out at night, the screaming birds, and they fly into you. Yeah, it was crazy. But
you'd still rather go back to Fiji. Yeah, I get it. And it is Fiji. It is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
I'd love to go.
Yeah.
So now, wait, did you get a ticket back to Fiji, or your season didn't? Your
my cast and season got gypped on all the things that other Survivor casts got, and I think it's because they moved the finale up, and Fijian Airlines didn't know it was moved, and even though I was, and thank you, Sia, wonderful recipient of the Sia Award. She wasn't there. I would love to have met her. So there were a lot of things that our cast did not get that other seasons did get.
Right. Did you think that, because I always assumed that maybe Fiji Airlines kind of wanted to back away from your season?
No, I don't think so. I hope not. I hope not.
Because other seasons, Tim, since they've moved to Fiji, Fiji Airlines has been a sponsor, and at least for a few different seasons, right, people were given a round trip ticket
every
back
season.
to Fiji.
Yeah, every season.
So people would take trips, and sometimes the cast or several cast members would go together and go back.
We were going to get a resort with all of our loved ones, and everybody go out.
And then they didn't get the tickets.
Oh.
So, yeah.
As you said, have we explained to you the Sea Award, Tim, and how that works?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So yeah, Janet, why don't you explain this to Tim? Because it's one of these weird things that you wouldn't expect unless you knew.
Sia is a singer, SIA, and she has taken a liking to Survivor, and she, out of her own kindness, if somebody strikes her as humanitarian or a character or somebody that she really likes, she gives them a monetary award. And I was fortunate enough to get that this past season
so
from her.
There's no longer an official fan for, like, so Tim was the official fan favorite of his season.
Right.
Survivor has had fan favorites a long time ago, but they've gotten
Yeah,
away
I
from
was
it.
too.
Sia came in about 3 or 4 years ago, and she has just become the one woman, like you said, committee. But it makes perfect sense because it's her money. I think it started with Ty and Mark Chicken. Right. So I think I told you. So Ty, this very sweet Vietnamese man who I think was actually a refugee from the war, went to America, whatever. But he was a vegetarian or a vegan and took a liking to the chicken, that they were planning to eat, and he named it for his boyfriend and carried it around everywhere. And so Sia was so touched by that she gave some money to Ty. And now it is just kind of exploded. And the criteria is Sia has to like you. That's about it. So we know she likes animal rights, right? She cares about, gender issues. And again, and people who she just feels, again, who might not have as much money as some other people on the cast. Like I think, Elaine got some money also, right? Because again, she was at that point a factory worker, right? So she got money. And I think then for 40, nobody did because all those people have at least $1 million.
That's true. However, she did help Donathan out who was having car problems and stuff like that.
And by the way, so Sia gave Donathan a lot more money, actually. I think that was even discussed on the show. I mean, Donathan told me a number that really kind of surprised me. Yeah. And then she just, and then I said, like, she would have, even that, he needed a new car. She bought him a new car.
Yeah.
So but it is just the committee of one, like I said, in terms of if you want to see. And we all
I was very lucky.
And but with Kelly on your season, people kept saying like, oh, she's playing for the Sia money.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, no.
I'm not saying she was, but that's what tends to happen, especially when somebody is being vocal, like I said, about animal rights or women's issues. Right. You're playing for the Sia money.
Right. No, you're
just
right.
Another one of these weird things about American Survivor. Right, that if you've got deep into the super fan community, you learn about.
Yep.
All right. So let's do the housekeeping. Yeah. Tim, first of all, where can people find you on social media?
You can find. Oh my goodness, you find my pencils dropped. You can. You find me on the floor. I can be found on Instagram and anything. So the little. Papaki thing, the little arabesque thing, at Professor_Tim_Wilson. And then I'm now on Twitter. And I'm growing on Twitter. It's terribly exciting. And I'm Prof_Tim_Wilson. And then I'm on YouTube in a thing called Zontool Films Limited, ZONTUL FILMS LTD. And I've just finally put up my little animated film of Edward Lear. So I got three.
I haven't seen that.
The first
the other one you put out earlier this week.
Yeah,
those I saw.
The first one of which is in Russian. So I'm showing off my Russian pronunciation, and I got my final goodbye wrong. Spasiba Bolshoi is only to one person. I should have said Spasiba Bolshoyu.
I was going to say, I remember 2 words of Russian because when I was in the Soviet Union, I do remember Spasiba and Pazhalsta, right?
Yes.
Oh, wow, that's pretty impressive.
That's it. That's all I remember.
Well, wait. We're now obviously going to have an entire conversation in Russian. There'll be Cyrillic letters floating across.
I can only say please or thank you, right? Those are my only
options. I think that's all that's necessary. I'm sure that's as far as Russia, and that's as far as Kelly needed to go with her potentially Russian cameraman.
Now it's a Russian cameraman.
Who knows? We have no name.
I'm not saying
Russians. You got to watch those Russians.
Yes, have I done all my? I think that's all.
Your Twitter. Basically, if you just search for Professor Tim Wilson, it will pop up on.
I'll tell you something extraordinary, Janet. When I came off my series, I was so loquacious and so sort of trusting. I remember somebody came up to me at King's Cross Station, which is a slightly dodgy place, and they said to me, "Can I have your telephone number?" She was very tall, and she was in fact Russian, and I gave her my telephone number. But I have been so careful ever since.
I know that Tim tends to go around telling people his phone number, and we're trying.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't. And I love the way that you're so trusting. But yeah,
Janet, you didn't have this problem, did you?
I did a little bit.
Yeah, you see, I think it's a problem that comes with the territory. You're locked into this system, and you feel so trusting that you come out and you just want to trust the world. Here's my telephone number. Here's my life. Just have me.
Well, the way I look at it is they can find out anything they want through the internet.
Right. Yeah, we talked about this. 20 years ago, it really took some research to find these people.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas now with social media, it's not that hard to get in touch with people unless they really don't want to be found.
Right.
So Janet, give people all of
you do a thing with your son.
Me.
No. Jamal was somebody else on here.
Jamal is another player.
Jamal.
And Jamal is another player on the show. And look up mamaj.net. And Jamal and I have 3 options we explain on our website of speaking programs. And, we'll go from there, see where this pandemic gets us. Right. And we attack, we address all the social issues of today.
mamaj.net.
mamaj.net.
But I was going to say, but you're Mama J. So how does Jamal? Mama J covers both you and Jamal. Is that the idea?
Me and Jamal. Yeah, that's why we did it.
Okay.
Janet from Survivor 39 is my Instagram, and you'll see a lot of stuff on there where you'll see pictures of me in Jolene bathing suits, and that's an organization that I'm working with. And
you got to make that coin. No judgment whatsoever. You get off the show and you take every opportunity they give you.
Yeah, and
nobody seems to do bathing costumes. Sorry,
and that's all right. And then my Facebook, Janet. Wait, I have 2 Facebooks. This is why I have my niece handling all this stuff.
Well, actually, if you can even just find my posts on Twitter and Instagram, I tag both. I tag Janet and Tim, so you should be able to find your fan pages there. And then your personal page, I will also tag when I post this.
Right, and my main charity, which I really, really, really want to get out to the world, is Give Kids the World. It's out of Kissimmee, Florida. And right now they really need support. It's like a Make-A-Wish, and it's for terminally ill children and their parents. And I love this organization, and if I can just anything.
This is a huge, and again, Survivor fans know about this organization because many of us, and I guess you're not going to have the opportunity this year, Janet. It's so sad, but maybe next year.
It's been moved 3 times.
But generally, we all gather in August in Florida, which is just as unpleasant as you think it would be in terms of the weather. But most of it's indoors, and it's a long weekend.
It's moved to December.
I know, so maybe we'll go for December, but normally it's in August. And, fans come and Survivor and people from other shows. It's not just Survivor, it's kind of a general reality TV. And there are other reality TV shows for other charities. But so Give Kids the World, if you've heard of Make-A-Wish. Children with, often life-limiting illnesses, right, can join, you can make a wish, whatever, and many, many kids want to go to Disney World. And this went on for a lot of years. And then they actually built this custom hotel called, Give Kids the World.
Phenomenal place.
And these families, I had a friend whose daughter, they went, I want to say 15 years ago. Her daughter is fine, but when she was a toddler, she had leukemia. And they go for a week. Everything is completely paid for. They have things like they have a 24-hour ice cream bar.
Yeah.
At 3 o'clock in the morning, you can make a hot fudge sundae. It's supposed to be a child's every dream.
There's no. They're not told
There's no, right. And it is completely covered for not only for the child, but for their entire family. And so they raise often, hundreds of thousands of dollars just in this one. They have other things up also, but, this is one of their biggest fundraising events. And I will just tell you, if you are a reality TV fan, right, whether it's Survivor, Big Brother, Amazing Race, The Challenge, Naked and Afraid, right, they're all there.
Yep.
And I remember being at the party once. It's like you're in this weird dream because I'm in this dream and my favorites from Survivor here and Big Brother, And you keep expecting to wake up. Like that's when I had a 15-minute conversation with Jonathan, right? When he told me the real tea about how much money Sia gave him. Right. And even in terms of the fact that I ended up with the podcast, my whole relationship with Johnny, it did start with a t-shirt. But the next thing that happened was I went to Florida, and we had a long conversation in the bar where he drank water and I drank things that were not water. And we became friends. So,
well, Karen, you're very good at it. You're very good at it. You really are.
Yeah.
At doing the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks. But so something you should really, really check out, Give Kids the World. Yes. Unfortunately, they have had to temporarily lay off a lot of their staff and cut the hotel because obviously not even just right now, but even when things get better with the virus, you're not going to be able to bring these medically fragile kids in for a while. But we still want the hotel.
They need the money. Yeah.
Money so that this doesn't all just evaporate.
Crumble.
Right? So it has to be in place so that when it finally is safe for these kids, and let's hope by next summer, right, that this will be over, please God. Right?
Hey, I'm scaling off a building in February for them.
Really?
32-story building, February 12th.
You Give Kids the World?
Yeah.
Okay, where is this going to be? Like in your area?
It's going to be down in Florida, I think in near Orlando.
Right, that's where they're based.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And in terms of, look, it is not cheap, but you have to remember that, the majority of the money does go for charity, right?
Yep.
And so that's what allows me to justify, I have to go to a nice hotel in Florida for 4 days and 3 nights, and I have to go to all these charity. It's so unpleasant, but I just have to do it because it's such a great charity. It's the best time. It's just. And again, if you're like me and you're kind of a nerd and you don't generally, spend a lot of time in bars, this is like, the Nerd Olympics.
This is great. It's great.
It's amazing. So please, please, please consider it. So you can see here, my Twitter is Karen Talks a Lot, and you can see that here. But I am so old, I'm just going to own this. At this point, I am so old that most of my presence is on Facebook. Right. So if you want to really hear what I think, I have my Twitter, I have my Instagram. I use those mostly just to promote the shows. If you want to hear me spout off about politics or the virus or, other stuff, you want to follow me on Facebook as Karen Bell Eisenberg. Now, coming up on Survivor NSFW, first of all, please check out our new website at survivornsfw.com. It really looks great. It looks very, very different from what we had even a few weeks ago. And I am on the masthead, so very, very happy about that. Thank you, Johnny. Tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern, Johnny will be talking with Courtney Yates of China and Heroes versus Villains, right? Somebody who I never thought we were going to hear from again, and I can't wait to hear what Courtney has to say. And next week we have Kobe Archer from Palau. If you want to talk about like old school Survivor. I met Kobe at another fan event a few months ago. It's been a long time. It feels like a few years ago, but I met Kobe back in February. And he is amazing. And for those, he actually does have a daughter named Janu. He played with a woman named. They became very close. He said, if I ever have a daughter, I will name her Janu. They are still close, and his daughter's name is Janu. She's a teenager now, and I just loved it. Awesome. Also, if you enjoy our program, please consider being a patron at patreon.com. Patrons get early ad-free access to all of our shows, like this one with Courtney. I'm going to go listen to it now. I don't have to wait for tomorrow night because I am a patron. You also get access to additional episodes like our weekly Q&As, our Castaway Watch-alongs, and other special programming. We also have a dedicated Facebook group where we play Survivor trivia and other kinds of trivia and other games, and we cast fantasy seasons and more. So please consider joining us at patreon.com. And please remember that if you buy a t-shirt with Johnny Fairplay, it's JONNY Fairplay.com, no H. You will get a call from Johnny Fairplay. So if you want him to call, please put your phone number in the comments, and do make your phone is on, because it's not unusual for Johnny to call you 5 minutes after you order. So if you get a call from a number you don't recognize, pick it up. It's probably Johnny. Next week, Tim and I are going to be joined by AJ Mass. Okay. So AJ is a well-known Survivor fan. He does a podcast every season for the 13 archetypes of Survivor that he says when you get to the merge, you can basically figure out that at that point in the season, you're going to have these 13 kinds of people, right? This is just the way the casting works. So that's interesting. I'm sure he'll talk about that tomorrow.
That is interesting.
Yeah. But AJ writes for a well-known cable sports channel Okay. And he is also the author of Being Mr. Met, because AJ was also, so Mr. Met is, you have mascots, Tim, for your sports teams? Like when you have a costume character dancing on the sidelines?
No, not that I know anyway.
Okay. So you'll talk to AJ, because AJ was Mr. Met. So he was the New York Mets. Mascot. And he would put in this costume, and with it's just as hot and uncomfortable as you would think. And so he wrote a great book about that called Me Being Mr. Met. But AJ, very, very interesting guy. Really. We
don't have cheerleaders either.
No cheerleaders.
None
Cheerleaders are for football, right? I think I'm not really a football fan. Can you
for American football?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, and then AJ also has a trivia podcast called Beat My Guest. That was I've been on the podcast. That was the first podcast I ever appeared on. And I'm going to beg you not to go check it out because it did not go well. I'm just kidding. But as these trivia things go, AJ will tell you that his are very difficult, and they were. And I basically embarrassed myself for a solid hour, but it was fun. So we're hoping to see you all again next week, same time, same channel at 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT. So please stay safe, stay healthy, wear your damn mask, people. It's not going to last forever. And
wear
we
the
will
mask.
see you again next week on Survivor NSFW Rewind. Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And
Thank you.